You can't teach an old dog new tricks. I mean, that's how the saying goes. But if that's true, then I guess anyone over the age of 30 should just pack it in because you're stuck in whatever career you got. Well, the truth is, the industry is full of people who have gone after this career much later in life because it's really never too late, and you are never too old to chase your dream of becoming a production music composer. So, on today's show, I sit down and chat with a longtime 52Qs member and now recent Full Sail graduate Greg Fellman, who did just that. And we chat about his decision to pursue a degree in music and a career in music after a successful career in social work. Plus, we listen to 3 of his cues, which were each recently selected to be featured during the Full Sail Hall of Fame induction ceremony on this week's episode of the 52Qs podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52Qs podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take deep dives into the different aspects of being a working production music composer. Plus, we feature a cue written by a member of the 52Qs community, and this week, we're going to be taking a listen to 3 cues written by my guest, Greg Fellman, which were all selected to be featured during Full Sail's recent Hall of Fame induction ceremony, so you definitely want to stick around for that. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad you found me. However you found me, I know you have a lot of options out there, be it podcasts and YouTube, so I really thank you sincerely for spending part of your day with me. I also want to give a special word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52Qs who help keep the podcast, the channel, and everything you see here going. We are 100% community supported, so if you like what I do here, don't thank me, thank them. And if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52Qs and unlock extra perks like live streams, workshops, interactive feedback, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description or, stick around because we're going to be talking more about that a little bit later in today's episode. So I was really excited to sit down and chat with a friend, a longtime student, a longtime student of mine, a longtime member of 52Qs. I think he was in the first couple of months back in the Facebook days, and recently graduated, had 3 of his cues selected for, amongst others, other submissions, selected for Full Sail's recent Hall of Fame ceremony. So that's a really, really big honor. But I wanted to talk to him about pursuing a career later in life as an adult student and kind of what you go through when you realize, hey, the thing that I've been doing for the last, 20 years isn't working out. And is it too late to pursue a career and your dream in music for media? So, without further ado, here is my recent conversation with Greg Fellman. I am so excited to welcome to the podcast, can I call a friend? A friend. Hey, we've shared pizza together. You're definitely a friend.
Absolutely.
One of my students, former students at Full Sail and a long-term member of the 52Qs community. I want to welcome Greg Fellman to the show. Hey, Greg, what is happening, my man?
Not much. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing really, really well. It's so good to see you, and I miss you, man. It was so good having you in town. Like I said, we went to a Lazy Moon in Orlando, and we split what could only be described as comically large slices of pizza.
They were ridiculous.
They were pretty ridiculous.
Yes, delicious.
And I wanted to start with what in the world were you doing in Orlando to begin with? Because you're not from Florida. Where are you hailing from?
From Colorado, Denver, Colorado.
You came all the way from Denver to Central Florida, specifically to Winter Park, Florida. And can you just share why you were in town? I mean,
it was a free trip, so I couldn't say no. I'm still in school at Full Sail University in the music production program, and they were having their Hall of Fame ceremony and Hall of Fame week, which you know all about. Mm-hmm. And they offered online students a contest where we could submit cues to be used in the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And we were able to submit up to 6, which was the number of inductees that year. And I submitted 5, and they actually chose 3 of my tracks to be used in the ceremony.
That is super, super exciting. And one of the big reasons I wanted to bring you here is just to honor you, because that's no small feat. Full Sail has, hundreds and hundreds of students just in the music program, thousands of students across all of their programs. And for you to submit 4 cues and get 3 of them selected. And in case you don't know, folks, Hall of Fame is kind of like NAMM meets Comic-Con, meets like BlizzCon. It definitely has kind of that con vibe, where there are speakers, and every year Full Sail inducts graduates and alumni who have really, really had a big impact on the industry, or have gone on to have really successful careers, whether it's like Pixar or Universal or EA games, or many, many different types of really successful folks out in the industry. And so Full Sail every year kind of puts on this convention, Comic-Con kind of vibe, where we have the speakers and we have special guests, and we have there's like food trucks and all these other. They shut the school down for like a week, and it's just open to anybody who wants to come, online or on campus students. And so for you to come down and be honored and have your music selected, I just want to say, just in front of like everybody, congratulations, Greg. That's no small feat, my man.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very proud of it.
Really, really excited. And we're going to listen to some of these. Actually, we're going to listen to all 3 of them here in just a little bit. As a matter of fact, it's going to be what we're going to be the cue of the week is going to be, I think we're going to listen to Lollygaggin Around. I think that's the one that you're most proud of.
Sounds good.
Lollygaggin Around. But beyond just honoring you for that accomplishment of being selected, I wanted to talk about higher education. Full Sail, you are an adult student, right? So you're not like fresh out of college, dewy-eyed with dreams and and a smile. You've returned back to school and you went to Full Sail. And full disclosure, I teach at Full Sail. I don't ever I don't mince words about that. But this isn't a Full Sail commercial. This isn't sponsored by Full Sail. I work there. I've been there for 10 years. I think it's a really good idea. And we've talked about higher education before on the show. In fact, I'll have a link to that episode where we talk about, do you need to go to college? And you can hear my thoughts on all of that. But Greg, I just wanted to kind of hear your story about what motivated you to say, after a career in other things that you were doing, and saying, okay, all right, I want to go back to school. So I want to hear that story, maybe talk about why Full Sail, because, Full Sail is not necessarily cheap. You probably could have gotten out, for cheaper out of state school or something like that. But let's start first with your story and how you got to the decision to return back to school as an adult student.
Wow. Yeah. I had been a social worker for over 2 decades, and I hit kind of, burnout, midlife crisis burnout or something like that. And it wasn't necessarily that much of a burnout, but it was, it just wasn't bringing me the joy that it once had. And so I left my job and was trying to decide what to do. And then COVID hit and shut everything down. And I knew that in my life, music has always been the core passion. A number of years ago, my sister gave me a T-shirt that just says "Music is my life," and it's a good motto. So I knew I wanted to get into that somehow, but I wasn't exactly sure how. So I started exploring, heard about Full Sail University, read about it, specifically the music production program, and felt that it was a good fit. Also that they had been doing the online program for a while. It wasn't just a pandemic-induced program. So, they had it dialed in, and it felt like a right fit for me. So I kind of figured, just knowing that these days there is so much media out there, there is so much need for music, because in the past it had always been like, well, there's so many composers out there, and I just figured there probably wasn't room for me. It's like, who says there isn't? There's plenty of people getting into it every day. So I just felt like I needed the tools and the knowledge, especially after 20 plus years of being away from school. And so it was the right fit for me and the right path for me.
Yeah. And what about your family, and your loved ones? Were they gung-ho on board, or was there a little bit of convincing or anything you had to do? Your significant others or whatever?
I don't think so. My wife has been fully supportive from the get-go, and is very excited. She's my biggest fan. Every cue I play her, she loves. And the rest of my family, it kind of made sense to them just because they've known me all along. They've known what a passion music has been in my life. So it just made sense.
And so what early on, so I'm assuming that, music was a part of your life early on before you went into social work. So what part was it of you that went, I'm just let's social work, what was there like a moment in band or something like that where you just kind of took the well-trodden path, of day job with, secure benefits and all of that?
Right. I was raised playing piano, but then bass guitar really became my primary instrument, and played that in bands in high school and jazz band in high school and college and everything. And yeah, my dream was to be a rock and roll star. And when I knew that wasn't going to happen, I kind of figured there really wasn't much else for me in music. And so I just turned my focus to something else. And at that time, psychology and philosophy were the interest for me, and that led into social work and that career. But it's always been a part of my life, and now I'm making it the main focus of my life.
Yeah. I imagine you could probably take like the psychology studies and everything that you've worked through and kind of leverage that into, understanding a little bit of the human psyche and crawling into the heads of the emotion that music needs to communicate. Has that come in handy? Have you drawn on those experiences as a composer?
I'd like to think so. Yeah, I think it does give me hopefully an advantage, and just understanding, yes, the variety of emotions we all experience, and therefore trying to get that into my music, and or try to help people feel those emotions in my music, whether it's scoring for a picture or doing some production music. I think it is an advantage.
It's interesting. You mentioned COVID earlier. Full Sail, I've came to Full Sail actually just a couple of weeks ago. I celebrated my 10-year anniversary with Full Sail. And what brought both Shannon and I down here was their online music program, because when we got here, it was only an online music program. And so from the ground up, Full Sail was built with online delivery in mind. So when COVID and all of that happened, it was super easy, barely an inconvenience. It was just a lateral move for us. I mean, I teach online and on campus, and it's literally the same curriculum for me, same projects, same assignments. The education that you got online was absolutely no different than the on campus. But I imagine that there are some schools. Well, I know there are schools that it was a complete fire drill trying to work all of that. And so many schools, especially my poor public school teaching friends, they just basically said, here's a Zoom login, work it out, and just kind of backed out. But for the campus folks, it was just kind of rolling them into the already robust online program. And speaking of online, as an online student, the challenges of working in an online environment while, having a day job or having life, and all of the commitments and responsibilities that go along with that. Can you speak to some of those challenges? And is there anything that you would specifically say to someone out there listening who maybe think that, hey, online is, easier or it's the smoother path. Spoiler, I don't think it is, but
No.
I would love your thoughts on that. Any advice you would give for someone looking for an online delivered course or study?
Yeah, I mean, one is that it's just so unstructured. So I think people need to create structure in their lives in order to succeed well in an online program. So carving out specific times to focus on one's schooling, the lectures, completing the assignments is vital to do. I mean, every week, Monday morning, first thing, I was doing my assignments as quickly as I could just to try to get it done, which is very different from my college experience 25 years ago when I waited until the last minute for just about everything. So yeah, starting out, creating some structure, because that lack of structure can be very difficult for a lot of people, I know. And for myself 25 years ago, 30 years ago, that might have been a major challenge for me. And then the other challenge is trying to make connections. I mean, luckily, I made a great connection with you. And when I found out that you had the Facebook 52Qs group right after class with you, I'm like, oh, I'm signing up for that. And that just helped me broaden my world and make some great connections. But also within school, with the online program, it is a challenge to connect with one's professors or one's other students. So it can be a very secluding experience. So you really have to work at making those connections, developing those relationships, and trying to work those things out. I mean, I feel like a lot of professors probably are so bored with the online lectures because hardly anybody shows up, and I would show up as much as I could, just to have that connection with the professor and ask them questions as much as I could.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge. It could be a challenge trying to teach an energetic kind of lecture to, an empty chat room or just a Zoom room full of names because, we don't make students turn on their cameras and that kind of thing.
Right.
But it's also, it's interesting that you touched on structure and organization and discipline. I tell the campus students that the online students really have somewhat of an advantage because they're already learning how to work the gig amongst all of the other responsibilities in their life.
Right.
When you're fresh out of college, you're 18, 19 years old, and you're made to sit in a classroom at Full Sail because our courses are 1 month, 4-week classes. And you might have a 2-hour lecture and a 4-hour lab, and you might have 2 classes at once instead of like 6 or 7. But to be able to be forced, if you will, to sit in a room for 6 hours and your only responsibility for those 6 uninterrupted hours is just to do the work. Man, that's a stinking luxury. And I wish I could go back and smack, 18 and 19-year-old Dave upside the head and say, dude, do you realize how much of a huge advantage you have right now? Because when you graduate, man, when you get out of college, when you start adulting, you really understand how rare that will be later.
Right.
And so
absolutely.
I tell my online folks all the time that you are getting a really good taste of what this gig actually feels like, because until you get to the point where you're able to do it full time, you will be doing it alongside all of the other things you have to do to keep the lights on, to keep life happening. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think it's a real touch point for folks who want to teach online. And we're in a golden age of online delivery. And if anything, man, COVID really, really kind of pushed that to the forefront. Cause I don't know about you, but Zoom was just kind of limping along, and then Zoom became the de facto delivery for education, like at least nationally, if not worldwide. And so you were there. You were there when it happened.
Right. Nobody knew Zoom 2.5 years ago.
I know. It was just it was the not Skype. That's all I knew about Zoom. It was like, Zoom, what is this kind of stupid app or whatever? So what was it specifically about Full Sail? Because I'm sure you had options. I mean, there are other online programs. I mean, there's Berkeley, which is fantastic. I have friends that teach up at Berkeley. I have friends who live in Boston, and there are plenty of other, state schools and those types of things. But what was it about Full Sail that attracted you beyond these others, especially knowing that Full Sail is one of the pricier ones? And so, what was it?
I think you get what you pay for, and they definitely have quality classes and quality educational system. I mean, just looking into it, and researching other programs, it definitely is the cream of the crop, if you will, up there with Berkeley, I would say. Yeah. And again, because they had the online program for years, they had that dialed in. So I figured, knowing that I wanted to do an online program, that was the one for me. And then also one other a person that I knew had gone to Full Sail, had done the audio production program, and highly recommended it. And so, when somebody who has a personal recommendation, that speaks a lot. So
yeah,
that was enough for me.
As we're publishing this, I mean, we're recording a little earlier, but as this is published, you will graduate tomorrow.
Yeah.
and how many times do I have to mention how expensive Full Sail is? But tell me about that, because I can imagine it's simultaneously super exciting, but also completely terrifying. So tell me about kind of how you're feeling right now, knowing that tomorrow you're going to be sitting in I'm assuming a virtual commencement ceremony.
Correct.
And I'll be there waving, you'll see me. But tell me about how you're feeling right now, and any advice you would give to someone else who maybe, a year or two before, further or earlier on their path than you are.
I'm very eager for it. I'm dealing with a little bit of senioritis right now, I think. And I'm just eager to be kind of set free out into the world. But it is, very scary, because, okay, now that you got this degree, what are you going to do with it? Here's where the rubber meets the road. And so it's daunting, it's terrifying, and I'm excited just because I guess, one thing I know I want to do is production music, which is why I follow 52 Qs. So during the week when I want to be composing and then I've got this classwork to do, it's like, oh man, I just want to focus on production music. So I'm looking forward to being able to put school behind me so I can focus on exactly what I want to do and start that journey and really start to make some inroads in this field. So it's certainly a mixture of terror and excitement and relief too. And pride.
Because I mean, unlike if you went to Full Sail to be a computer animator, you could go get a job at Pixar or Lucasfilm or any of those other, all of the thousands of names you see fly by at the end of every Marvel movie. Those are all like guys and girls just like you, went to school, learned about some stuff that they can do on a computer, and then go get a job. But unlike those jobs, I mean, there's not, like, Discovery Channel isn't hiring necessarily production music composers. And even when you work for libraries, it's all kind of, freelance and on spec. And there has to be a level of entrepreneurship to this, because unlike those other degrees, there's not a big company waiting to absorb you into their fold so that you could get, benefits and a 401k and all of that stuff. Yep. So what are you doing in that kind of entrepreneurial mind to start making inroads into the industry?
Well, I've already, sent out cues to libraries. I've already become a member of Taxi. I'm starting my business, incorporating all that stuff, kind of all the business steps. And I've actually had a couple businesses in the past, so I have some experience with this. So just taking all those steps to start the business, start a proper website, and then just composing as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And trying to make as many connections as I possibly can. And I know networking is part of it. It's one of the most challenging parts of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
One of the most challenging aspects that I find. But towards that end, I plan to go out to the Production Music Conference in LA in September. And I actually did that last year.
Yep.
And made some connections then. Hope to make some more this year.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, whether it's digital, whether it's remote, digital, online, or whatever, it's still about relationships. I mean, the business is that's still the currency of this business.
Yep.
Now, one of the things at Full Sail that they really focus on, whether it's the film program, the computer dev program, or the music program, is giving you a very broad education. So like in the film program, if you want to go to Full Sail to learn how to direct, you're also going to learn how to run a camera. You're going to learn how to paint sets. You're going to learn how to write a script. You're going to learn how to hang lights and all of those kind of things. So the music program embraces that exact same mentality, of which my course is one of them. My course teaches students how to write production music. Another course teaches students how to do game music or film music or mixing and mastering and engineering and songwriting and lyrics and everything. And so I think that's a real big advantage and allows you to kind of graduate with a lot of different skills. As that having been said, what are some of those other skills you've learned in those other courses that have started to find their way into your production music side of things?
I guess first come to mind is what I'm currently in. I'm in game composition right now, which includes a lot of sound design. And that was also in our last class as well. And so that is definitely playing a part in my experience right now, is trying to create the sounds, just because in the past, I definitely did not feel creative in that realm. So, if it's not in a sampled library, I'm probably not creating it. So just getting more comfortable with that, trying to create sounds, as well as just recording other instruments, trying to create impacts, reverses, whooshes, all those types of things. Because I know, as you've said before, it's like you should try to create something real in your track for every track, so it doesn't sound fake or completely sampled. So I'm trying to do certainly more of that. Other skills, I mean, the just audio editing has been pretty fascinating, and if I want to get into another career, I might go back to film school for just audio editing. It's fascinating stuff how they create all the sounds and layer them specifically in films and TV, but that's another life.
Right. That's after 2 decades of being a composer.
Yeah. And then, when I've had time, I'm just trying to learn as much as possible. And one nice thing about Full Sail is they give you an account to LinkedIn Learning. So I've been watching as many videos as I possibly can just to learn more compositional skills, to learn more programs and DAWs and stuff.
The old Lynda stuff, right? Lynda,
yeah, exactly.
LinkedIn. Yeah. And so there's, by the way, if you haven't found it, there is a deep, and I mean deep, exploration of Omnisphere over in LinkedIn Learning.
I started that and I was like, it was over my head pretty quickly.
It is dense. It's like, is this like a doctoral level type of Omnisphere class?
Right.
But yeah, I took it because we have to take continuing education credits, right? And so we have to have like 12 or 15 hours of continuing education every year. And so one year it was, I sat there it's like 8 hours long. It's really long. Right. And I took that entire Omnisphere. And I felt like my brains were going to fall out by the end of it. But no, that's pretty dense. And I've also learned, Premiere. I've learned how to work Premiere. Mm-hmm. I've learned about like lighting. I've also taken like some script writing kind of things. And yeah, so I'm
learning about Squarespace right now as I start my website.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're doing Squarespace.
That's what I'm going to give a try to. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, that's what 52 Qs is on Squarespace. And
Really?
just a shout out to Shannon. If you have any questions, Mrs. Kropf can absolutely help because she's one of those Squarespace Circle members and stuff. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have any Squarespace questions. For sure.
I'm sure I will.
Yeah. Don't mind us, folks. Me and Greg are just going to have a little short conversation.
Little powwow. Yep.
So that's really exciting. Now let's talk about, you said incorporating and starting your business. Did you choose like an LLC? Or are you doing like a sole proprietor? Or so LLC. Talk about that process. And did Full Sail, and because I know there's a business class that goes along with it. Did that help as well?
Yeah, definitely. In helping me decide kind of what type of business to choose. And then I've got a good friend actually who's a lawyer in the music business program or the music business world. So I just kind of went to him and said, "Hey, I want to incorporate. Can you help me out?" And so he's helping me through that process now.
Yeah, that's really cool because tell you what, you can get absolutely crushed with taxes and everything if you don't take care of all that business, and especially as royalties and all of that start piling up, that can really bite you because it completely destroyed me one time to the point of like a 5-figure tax bill. Oof. And that was the largest check I've ever written. And on one hand, I feel really blessed and like, okay, all right, the universe is smiling upon me. The fact that I have to write that. But on the other hand, man, that's painful.
That's a tough lesson to learn.
So you mentioned that production music is kind of your primary focus. Are there other aspects that you're wanting to get into and other things you want to branch out with?
Yeah, possibly. I would certainly like to get into scoring. And I've got a couple of friends who are kind of into the Denver film scene. So they're trying to help connect me to some local filmmakers here. And actually one of them for one of her classes when she was in film school last fall, I scored her documentary for that, which actually has been featured in a couple of film festivals just recently.
Oh, wow.
It's been a fascinating process. So I really enjoy the process of composing or scoring specifically to picture, and I would like to try to do that a little bit more. So that's kind of my goal, is to do a 2-pronged approach with production music and scoring.
Right on. That's very, very cool. Well, man, is that film? Is that available anywhere, like on a YouTube or anything like that? Do we know?
I don't believe it is, actually.
Yeah.
I'll have to check on that.
Yeah. Maybe check on that. By the time this airs or publishes, maybe it'll be out there if you can look that up. But we would absolutely love to put a link in the show notes for you, and then everybody can check that out because I'd love to hear it. I want to hear it.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
thanks.
Excellent. So we're about out of time here, but before I let you go, I want to kind of ask you any advice you would give someone out there, maybe fresh out of college, or maybe they've had 2 decades as a social worker or something like that. And we've talked, like I said in the previous episode, you don't have to go to college. You don't have to do this, especially in the day of YouTube and Coursera and all of these and lessons, and I mean, folks watching my channel right now are taking lessons or doing the mastermind groups or any of those other kind of things. There are so many educational opportunities out there beyond the traditional college or something like Full Sail, which is kind of the non-traditional route. But Greg, for those of you, or what would you say to those folks out there? Let's say in your position who might be looking at a social worker job, and maybe feeling unfulfilled. Do you have any advice, encouragement, or pearls and words of wisdom that you could give them?
It goes back to that basic of follow your dream. Find the thing that sparks that joy, and follow it and make something out of it. And these days there are paths to success in whatever path you want to find. Actually, when I said whatever sparks joy, it just reminded me of a question we often used in palliative care, in social work. We would ask people, what brings you joy? And, because we could ask the questions, oh, what do you do for work? How many people do you have in your family? And they would give you the dry answers. But then as soon as you said, it's like, what sparks joy in your life? It's like, oh, I had this guy just light up and talk about his classic cars that he had and stuff. And so it's that idea is like, what is it that sparks joy and how can you make a career path out of it? And for me, Full Sail was a good avenue to pursue that, to follow my joy and make something out of it. So I encourage everybody to give it a try.
Yeah.
It's never too late either.
Yeah. And it's never been easier. It's never, there's so much just available and recognize that people are living their lives, but learning how to do all of these other things, whether it's production music, whether it's being a singer-songwriter. I don't know. Maybe it's being a novel writer, or maybe you just want to get into watercolors, or just finding something that is fulfilling to you that you can work on alongside while you are bettering yourself and moving towards that thing. So Greg,
and
once
I guess
again,
can I add one other thing to that?
Absolutely. I
would say too, it's like, you don't have to be the absolute best in that either. You and I have talked about this, that I like your model of, in production music, that you are an artisan, not an artist, because I know I am not a John Williams. I am not, any of these amazing composers or musicians, but I can write production music and I can, do it really well and well enough to make a career at it. So you don't have to be the best in your field. If you are, great. But you can be good at it and still be successful.
Go win Oscars. If you could do that, go.
Right, sure.
Go win Emmys. Go for it. Go fill up your Grammy table. The rest of us, I mean, somebody's got to write the music for like The Bachelor, right?
Exactly.
Somebody's got to write the music for Dr. Pimple Popper. Right? They're not going to get John Williams ain't ever going to score an episode of Dr. Pimple Popper. Nope. However, why not us? Why not
exactly.
us? There's good money to be had. And so I don't know, I'm never too good or, too much of an artiste to have my music on an episode of, Black Ink Crew or Louisiana Law or Getaway Driver or any of those types of shows, because somebody has to write it.
Yep.
And so I love that's resonated with you, because any listener to this podcast or this channel knows that is the through line, right? That is the Colorado River running through the Grand Canyon of my psyche that just continues on, and I my entire work ethic revolves around that. And so it was really good to get to know you through Full Sail, and even better to get to know you on the other side of Full Sail. And once again, congratulations on those 3 cues that got picked up and got selected. And Full Sail flies you out, puts you up in a hotel, and we got to meet face to face. And I know we'll get to meet face to face again in September when we're at the PMA conference.
Yep,
but man, you're doing it right, Greg. You're doing all of the things, and seeing a student just like you come through the program, whether it's through Full Sail or through, private lessons that I've had, with other students and everything, and just like really wring the sponge out of every possible assignment. I think that's the real key. Just go soberly look at the real opportunity that you have before you in an age where it's never been more accessible, and really just grab it. And you've done that. The fact that we're talking today, nearly 2 years later, right? Right. And you're still very much a part of my world, and I appreciate you. Once again, congratulations. And can I just say, I'm really proud of you, man.
Thank you.
You're one of my former students, and I'm super proud of you. And when I saw that you got selected for Hall of Fame, and it's like one of my former students from Full Sail and a 52Q family member and all of that, I absolutely had to have you onto the podcast and just dote on you a little bit. I hope that's okay.
Thank you for having me. And of course, as always, a big thanks to you, Dave, for all you have done to develop this community and inspire me and many others. So thank you.
Well, it goes both ways because together we really, truly are better.
Indeed.
Speaking of better, we're going to take a really quick break. And then when we come back, I want to listen to Lollygaggin Around. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, kind of where your thought process on that. And so we're going to listen to that. But really quick, we're going to take a quick break.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52 Qs podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52 Qs isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52 Qs community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions, which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52qs.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52qs.com.
So that was Lollygaggin Around. First of all, mad props for using the term lollygagging. And
Thank you.
It's like, sounds like my grandpa, you're lollygagging around. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the cue, the inspiration behind the cue, and maybe some of the production techniques you used for that?
You know, honestly, the inspiration for the cue was messing around with Omnisphere, just trying out different sounds in Omnisphere. Came across one, which is that lead synth sound, kind of a lo-fi sound, and just it inspired me to start playing and led to that track. I hadn't done a lo-fi track before, but it was fun to explore that. And this goes back to actually one video you had asking kind of, where do you get an inspiration from? And I remember I had commented on it saying, sometimes just playing a sound inspires me. and you get the right sound and you just start making something out of it. And it's like, oh, this could be a great lo-fi track. This could be a great dramedy track, whatever. That's how that developed. And then you and I did a private lesson on it, and that really helped shape it as well and get it even more lo-fi. And it was a lot of fun to make.
Yeah, I tell you, I think play gets overlooked, especially in our artisan brain. The time to make the donuts, we're just sitting here making cookies. The fact that what we do is it's like at the intersection of creativity and commercial, and industry. And so it can be really easy just to kind of, I'm just cranking out cues. But you hit on a really good point. There's something to be said about just playing. Now, sometimes that's a luxury you don't have, whether it's a deadline. And from being in my class, it's like you got a cue due in 3 days. So you don't have time to explore the space for 2.5 days. But no, I think allowing a sound to inspire you, to unlock creativity, I think that's like the best of both worlds. Because if you could do that and then leverage it into another cue, yeah, that's a win. Hulk meme, that's a win.
Right.
So yeah. Now let's talk about, oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because yes, sometimes you sit down and it's like, okay, today I'm going to make a dramedy cue. But then sometimes you just have to create whatever is coming out of you and make it work into a production track somehow.
Very cool. Well, you know what? I want to go ahead and listen to these other two cues. This first one is called A Skirmish of Wit. Anything we need to know about A Skirmish of Wit before we listen to it?
Oh, one of my early attempts at a hip hop production music track.
Well, it was selected, so there's that.
There's that.
And so let's take a quick listen to A Skirmish of Wit. Again, another Hall of Fame selection for Full Sail. So that was A Skirmish of Wit. I like that title, A Skirmish of Wit. And then finally, we're going to take a listen to The Funk Detective, again, the third cue that was selected for the Hall of Fame ceremony this past year at Full Sail. So tell us a little bit about Funk Detective.
Oh man, it's been about a year since I wrote that. I think that was another one that was inspired by just playing around and coming across a fun, heavy synth sound that just led into this weird little melody, and then trying to I think make a funky track out of it. Yeah, I'll just let it speak for itself. But it was a fun little exploration.
Well, Greg, once again, I want to thank you so much for joining me for today's episode of the 52 Qs podcast. And congratulations, not just on the Hall of Fame stuff, which we've talked plenty about, but on graduating again with another degree. Just
Thank you
add it
very
to
much.
the pile. Because it really is no small task to graduate with a college degree. And let alone, how many, is this your second one? Third one?
Including a master's, I guess third.
Just add it to the pile. Just add it to the pile. But it's no small feat. And so I just want to recognize you, and I want to recognize all of those listeners out there. You know, I know we're into July, but I know some of you probably have just graduated. Some of you might be thinking about school right now, and whether it's Full Sail, whether it's Berkeley, whether it's the community college down the street. I'm not, I'm a big believer in college. I don't believe you have to go, but if you really want to kind of supercharge a career, I think going and getting an education from a school like Full Sail or your state college or whatever can position you in a way that maybe just kind of studying on your own through YouTube videos and all of that maybe will take a little bit longer. And I think, somebody like Greg, who, understands the value of education and you didn't necessarily need in your life to go back to school. But Greg, congratulations, my man.
Thank you very
all
much.
of your success.
Greatly appreciate it.
And I'm really looking forward to what's next for you.
Me too. It's going to be a journey.
Once again, a huge shout out and thanks to Greg Fellman, not just for joining me, on today's episode, but for also just your long time support of the channel and 52 Qs and everything we do here. Thank you. Thank you so much. It really is folks like you who make this not only possible, but super, super rewarding. And seeing you graduate, I know you're off to really, really great things. So thank you. Thank you very much. I do offer coaching services. I do one-on-one sessions. We have mastermind groups, and I also do video feedback. So if you're looking for constructive feedback and critiques on your cues, whether it's mixing and mastering, whether it's form and structure, or even titles or music theory side of things, all of those things. If that's something that you're interested in, on top of lessons and on top of other masterminds and stuff, then head over to 52qs.com/coaching. You can book your session today, or you can send me your cue and I can get you a high quality, full stereo, 15-minute video right back to you, usually within just a matter of a couple of days. But that's going to do it for me this week. You don't want to miss next week, where I thought it would be a really good idea to unpack the various ways that I make money in the music industry. Everything from royalties to maybe getting into some arrange me and some sheet music publication, my teaching career, among other things. So I thought it'd be really interesting to unpack how I personally make a living making music. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you once again for spending your time with me. Thank you to the family, friends, and patrons who helped make all of this possible. But I hope that you've had an amazing week 30, and I know the universe has amazing things for you in store for week 31. Until next time, peace. The 52 Qs podcast is copyright 2022 Dave Croft, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the 52 Qs community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52qs.com.